Now, Andrei, to you first. Mr. Barroso said that EU sends some clear message to both Russia and Georgia. What do you make of it? What is the essence of this message, of this EU response to Russia?
Well, I think that EU is united in its opposition to Russia's recognition of the two breakaway republics. At the same time, it's also clear that EU, at least at this stage, is not ready to introduce any serious sanctions against Russia. It doesn't have the leverage that might force Russia to change its mind. So, in a way, it is a delayed situation. I think that many in the EU would like to watch and to see how the situation in the field evolves, and then probably we can see new steps from EU countries.
Yeah, but Andrei, I mean, we listened to it for quite a bit of time here, but there's only two substantive things that came out of it that I can see, is that Russia must adhere to the 6-point ceasefire agreement, which Russia says it is in compliance with every single day, and that since the European Union doesn't agree with that, it's going to postpone the partnership agreement the two sides were going to pursue. So what happened here today? I mean, postponing of the partnership agreement. They've condemned Russia's recognition of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Russia is not going to turn back on that. It will not turn back on that. That's done. Okay, ceasefire agreement, that's how Russia interprets it. I mean, essentially, we had a lot of talk here. Have we hit a brick wall, but just in a nice rhetorical way?
Well, I think that the United Nations wasn't involved, but the European Union had to make a clear statement. Because there was a lot of pressure on the European Union to make such a statement, and we know that there are a number of countries which would like to have some tougher measures being introduced against Russia. So it's a kind of delicate compromise. I think that that's the best solution they could agree on. It's a common denominator, what you would like to see.
Did we see any teeth here? I mean, my goodness, if the common denominator is to say we disagree with Russia's actions, that really says something about the paralysis of the European Union in terms of foreign policy. And one would think, in my opinion anyway, that Russia would be the easy one to go after, okay, because of the new members in the European Union. They certainly want to have sanctions against Russia. I mean, I think President Kaczynski said that the European Union should destroy Russia. I mean, he went to some extreme like that. But I mean, it seems to me that what could possibly be the next step? Because Russia is not going to be, I'll say it really bluntly, not afraid of one word that was said this evening.
Do you expect any sanctions, actually?
But, let's see what specific sanctions they could possibly enforce. For example, they can somehow change the visa regime with Russia, but who will suffer? Mostly the Russians who are sympathetic to Europeans, mostly Russians who would like to go to Europe, who would like to study there, who would like to work there. So it's not really an option.
And the reciprocity element as well. I mean, then Russia would throw these kind of visas on people that work in Russia that are sympathetic to Russia. I mean, it goes back and forth, back and forth. What other things can they do?
Well, probably they could, in theory, introduce some kind of economic sanctions against Russia. But again, there is nothing that they produce that Russia wouldn't be in a position to buy elsewhere. They will buy Lexus, extensive Mercedes-Benzes or something.
We were reporting earlier in our program here that there's a major Russian coal company that's going to IPO in London. Now, London doesn't want the IPO there. This is very good for the city. It's a magnet for Russian money. They don't want that. I mean, that's why I find these things to be quite nonsensical here. What do we need to get at? For both sides, for Russia to be able to understand that the European Union, or the other way around, that they have to respect Russia's neighborhood. I mean, I'm saying it bluntly. Nobody likes to say it that way in the 21st century, but that's the fact. Russia has security concerns in its neighborhood. How do we make that into Eurospeak where everyone can understand it and appreciate it?
Well, I would add one more point. I think that when the whole thing started, Russia hoped that the European Union might be an honest broker in this particular conflict. And it turned out, at least from the Russian viewpoint, that the European Union was almost as one-sided and almost as biased as the United States. And of course that created a lot of resentment here in this city in Moscow. And I think when we talk about mistrust, it's not just on the European side, it's also on the Russian side, unfortunately.